think it's an important conversation that we need to have, given that the first thing we hear so often after an attack like last week, and it is a right thing, is that most ordinary Muslims in this country, the vast majority, bear no relation to those beliefs. And yet, some do, and those beliefs have to be addressed. And sometimes mocking something is addressing it. 0345 6060 973, the number. You can text 84850 or tweet at LBC. Here to talk about this with me for a few minutes is Douglas Murray, Associate Director of the Henry Jackson Society, and Jay Islaam, a comedian who is a Muslim as well. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Jay, do you believe that Islam is a special case when it comes to mockery, protected from mockery?
I don't think it should be. I think it certainly is at the moment. We have this weird situation in comedy clubs, for example, right now, where if, for example, someone had said, "I'm offended by something because I'm a Christian," we think that's ridiculous and we laugh at them. But if somebody says, "I'm offended by something because I'm a Muslim," the whole world suddenly stands to attention and takes that very, very seriously. And I don't think you can have one rule for Islam and a different rule for other religions. I don't think that's the way it should be. I think every ideology should be something that you are allowed to challenge and criticise if you want to. I think that's very important.
And what kind of conversations do you have with fellow Muslims outside of the comedy circuit about this, about the Charlie Hebdo-style mockery, or even just verbal mockery between friends?
It's a very strange situation because I know people who have a very different opinion. I know other Muslim comedians who have a very different opinion, who think that it's wrong to mock Islam and think it's wrong to mock all religions. And of course, the reason they say it's wrong to mock all religions is they don't want their own religion mocked, rather than them coming from a point of principle. Whereas I come from the point of principle that it's very important that we have unfettered right to freedom of speech. That's something that is very important to me as an artist. And that includes, for example, for the far right. I'd rather they say that they're white supremacists and be allowed to say that so that we can critically confront that ideology. The problem I think we have is that Britain isn't racist and British people are generally good, decent people. And the reason there's discomfort socially around saying anything critical of Islam is because of the far right. The far right, like the BNP, criticise Islam because it's a way of signalling their hatred of Africans, Asians, Middle Eastern people without falling foul of race hate laws. I'd rather they be allowed to be very honest and say, actually, we are racist. Now, because the far right criticise Islam, most people don't want to in any way associate with that far right because, like I said, British people are good, decent, not racist people. And so they feel it's safer not to adopt any of the rhetoric or the symbols of the far right, like the flag of St. George, for example, and they avoid talking about Islam in a negative way. And there's a concern for many people that being critical of Islam is the same as hating Muslims, and it's not.
Let me bring in Douglas Murray here. Do you think it's more than that? Do you think it's fear, Douglas?
Well, of course it's fear. I mean, what could you do that would be smaller than drawing a cartoon if you were to make a joke about something? We all know now that no publication in Britain, and really no publication left in the world, would publish a cartoon of the founder of Islam, however funny it was. And people often try to fall behind the defense of, well, I didn't find this or that cartoon funny. And it's not the point. The point is that Jyllands-Posten, the Danish paper that did publish some cartoons of Muhammad 13 years ago now, 12 years ago now, now won't do it because of the enormous security costs and the numerous attempts on the lives, not only of the cartoonists themselves, but on the people who work in the offices of that paper. We all know what happened to Charlie Hebdo in January 2015, and that was the last magazine in France willing to publish any joke cartoons about Muhammad. And now Charlie Hebdo won't do it either. They announced last year that even the surviving journalists and cartoonists, they won't depict Muhammad anymore. So since there is a blasphemy police, small in number maybe, but they exist, who are willing to shoot and kill people who are seen to have in any way mocked the founder of Islam, of course it means that different rules apply. And I'm afraid that most people, even most comedians, much as they like to think that they speak truth to power and so on, are enormously influenced by whether or not a Kalashnikov is likely to be fired at them.
Jay?
I disagree. I don't think it's the Kalashnikov that most comedians worry about. It's the commissioning editors of television, the people who run the comedy clubs and book them, who pay their salaries, that they're worried about upsetting. And that's the real reason that a lot of comedians will avoid criticising Islam. It's for the sake of their career and protecting their career. I think that essentially comedians, like a lot of us, are cowards. And we do work from self-interest. And so it's not... I don't think the Kalashnikov is really a real threat to their lives day to day.
If I could just... I suspect that people fear a bullet to the head more than they fear a comedy store manager. But it's possible, of course, that the combination of the two is the problem, isn't it? I mean, I know certainly that all journalists and newspapers in the UK, that, as I say, all the newspapers that refuse to publish cartoons, they usually hide behind the defence of good manners.
Protecting staff.
But really, what it is always is fear. And in private, all of them admit that. It's just that publicly they won't, because they like to talk truth to power or to be seen to. And as for the sort of comedy store owners, I mean, I know cases of comedians who've walked into exactly this problem, and the problem they have is not just that what they say may come to the attention of, as I say, the Blasphemy police, but also that venue owners and managers can also then themselves hide behind this. You know, we don't want this particular act, or you don't want them to say this particular thing, because if they do, we will have potentially protests and so on, you know, generally actually, which wouldn't emerge. But this is the point about fear, isn't it? That even if a few people get shot in the head somewhere, the impression it makes on the rest of society is very considerable. And a lot of people will have, indeed, an over concern. And I think that is seeped through our society. You see it, as I say, across the media, and I think you see it across popular culture, which is very, very brave about everything other than this.
And Jay, tell me, as a non-Muslim, tell me exactly what the depiction of, or the mockery, the depiction of the Prophet, or the mockery of the religion. At worst, what does that feel like to somebody who really feels it is just beyond the pale? I mean, you know, you can regard it as rude, you can regard it as offensive, you can regard it as unhelpful. Those are all things that you could say about it. But when it goes beyond those things, what is it that's so bad about that?
Well, firstly, I'm going to disagree with Douglas Murray regarding the threat situation. I don't think that the threat is real. I think the issue is that it's socially unacceptable. It's socially discouraged, and that's why people have trouble with comedians.
In the way that when I was growing up, if I said, Jesus Christ, my mum would say, Sheila, mind your language, don't take the Lord's name in vain.
Yes, exactly. But a bit more than that, I guess.
But in what way more?
Conception that it's racist to criticise Islam, when of course it's not.
Because it's not a race.
Islam is a religion. Islam is an ideology. Islam is a way of life.
A philosophy.
Yes, exactly. And so it's not racist to criticise Islam. However, the misconception is that it is, and it's people not wanting to appear racist. I think the threat is ludicrously blown out of proportion. It doesn't exist, and most people realise that the actual threat to a comedian who might make a joke will not go beyond.
All right. Well, let me bring Douglas. Go on.
We might have different opinions on that from different circles of friends, but I can assure you that once you have a few friends shot for blasphemy, you change your mind. There have been too many people I know, and too many cases I could cite of people across our continent who thought that actually people wouldn't come for them. Theo van Gogh in Holland thought that people wouldn't come for the person he himself described as the village idiot. But Mohammed Boyeri decided to shoot him as he cycled to work one day, and then stab him repeatedly in the chest and try to decapitate him in the streets of Amsterdam. I'm afraid that although there's definitely an element of good manners, there's definitely, Jay's right, there's definitely a fear of being seen to be a bigot or something like that, but it is impossible to exaggerate the extent to which a small amount of violence in a peaceful society can make everybody fear the men of violence.
And can I ask you, Douglas, just finally, what you think is achieved by mockery? Not just of Islam, of anything. Give me a sense of what strength there is in mockery, because an awful lot of people believe that there isn't any, it's just rudeness.
My view is the mockery thing is the very smallest part of this. I mean, being able to joke, as it were, about something, being able to laugh at something is the smallest thing imaginable. I think you have to defend the rights of cartoonists and others Because if you don't get that, you won't be allowed to do any of the other things. How many novels have been written, anything like the Satanic Verses, and published in the 20 or more, 25 years now since that book was published? Publishers in Britain won't publish that. It's the same thing with try to have an academic discussion about this in this country. Try to have any discussion, not about mockery. Try to have a serious discussion about violent things that are within every religion, but particularly exist within the Islamic tradition and within the founder. And I'm afraid you walk, as I know from my own experience and the experience of many people I can tell you about, you walk into a whole field of woes that does not come up about any other subject in our society. And I wish that was different.
Well, we are doing it now. We're doing it now, and I hope we're doing it constructively and decently. Thank you very much indeed, Douglas, for your time. Douglas Murray, Associate Director of the Henry Jackson Society, and thank you to Jay Islam, a comedian and a Muslim.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.